here in Austin, Texas for the third annual Netroots Nation, formerly known as Yearly Coast, which is the annual conference in which bloggers, activists, politicians, and party staffers gather to discuss policy, talk about strategy, and network. Chris, there's been a lot of talk lately about Obama's real or perceived shift to the center. What do you make of this whole thing?
Well, it certainly seems to be conventional wisdom at this point, and I think when you look at the initial reaction that the campaign suddenly has to almost anything from a Supreme Court decision to a major news event, it almost always seems to be very cautious. Whether or not it's conservative, it's definitely very cautious. It doesn't seem like it's hurt him that badly, but it also clearly hasn't helped him. He's dropped about 1% in the polls against John McCain. His fundraising seems solid, perhaps not record-breaking, but definitely solid. So he's taken maybe a slight hit from it. It's a bad move, not necessarily because moderate politicians are unpopular, but because it's always dangerous for any politician to be perceived as running away from himself. That's far less popular than any ideological position any candidate could ever take.
And what role do you think the Netroots will play this fall?
I think the Netroots will unquestionably continue to be one of the major activism sources in the Democratic Party in terms of fundraising, in terms of boots on the ground, in terms of pushback against the media, in terms of trying to expand the playing field and create buzz for candidates up and down the ticket, and without question, continuing to push on legislation, which we've found out is something that needs to be done year-round, cycle-round, and you can't just expect that when you get more Democrats, you'll get more progressive legislation.
What role do you see the Netroots playing if Senator Obama wins?
Any movement, I think, always struggles a bit once you take over all three branches, and grassroots activism there's a danger that it can drop off. So I think the key for the Netroots is to continue to build solid online infrastructure that will be effective, even if there's somewhat of a drop off in traffic, there's somewhat of a drop off in activism. We're going to have to shift more towards legislation, which I think is key. We're going to have to shift more towards infrastructure building. But we were very successful at that in 2005, 4 years ago, even after Republicans won all four things, in terms of we continued to build new organizations, we continued to build new media, and we played a key role in the Social Security fight. So I think we're older as a movement. We're much more mature as a movement. We've done off-year stuff before. We know what to do when there's no elections going on, and I think we'll succeed.
And how do you see the Netroots' role changing, if at all, if Senator McCain wins?
If Senator McCain wins, I have to admit that I'll keep going, and a lot of people I know will keep going. But there's also going to be a sense of just feeling completely exhausted. That after everything that's happened. Seemingly like a once-in-a-generation opportunity to take over all three branches and hold them with wide margins for between 4 and 6 years. There'll be a great sense of disappointment. Probably a lot of people will drop off because they're too exhausted, but we're going to keep going no matter what happens.